At 2:13 a.m., rain tapped the plexiglass roof of the Queen's bus shelter in thin, relentless needles, and Aria Reyes stood with her back to an ad for luxury watches she would never touch, counting damp bills under the weak blue light of her phone. 20, 30, 40, 45, 46, 47. She flattened each dollar against her thigh before folding it again, as if neat edges could stretch money into rent, utilities, metro fare, and groceries for two people. The paper smelled like wet denim and disinfectant, the same sour clean scent that had clung to her for 14 hours at the clinic. And when she swallowed, she tasted stale coffee and nothing else. Hunger had moved past complaint and settled into a tight, steady ache, another line item in a life run by arithmetic. The last bus was 10 minutes late, then 12, then 16. She kept one shoulder angled toward the street and the other toward the wall, an old habit she had never been able to shake. Water pooled at the curb and reflected red brake lights in fractured streaks. A cab splashed past. Two men laughed under an umbrella half a block away. Somewhere above the awning, a loose strip of metal rattled every time the wind turned. Aria checked her balance again, not because she expected a different number, but because dread felt less sharp when it had a screen and a figure attached to it. $112.08 in checking. Landlord texts stacked one over the other, each one politely worded and less patient than the last. Need update by tomorrow morning. Please respond. I want to work with you. The electric company alert arrived while she was reading them. Orange icon, final notice language. She locked the screen and pressed the phone into her coat pocket until the vibration stopped. Her wrist began to throb the way it always did in cold weather. A deep ache along the old crescent mark she hid under 3 cheap bracelets from a discount bin on Steinway Street. She rubbed the spot through the sleeve with her thumb, then dropped her hand quickly, irritated with herself for noticing. The scar was small. The memory attached to it was not. Raoul had called it a misunderstanding when she flinched the next morning, had kissed her forehead in front of neighbors, had reminded her he only got rough when she made him repeat himself. The body remembered what the mouth could not safely say. Even now, years after the divorce papers were signed and notarized and filed, cold nights dragged his voice back into focus with ugly precision. The bus finally hissed to the curb at 2:31. She climbed aboard with 8 other people and took the side-facing seat near the rear door, where she could keep her bag on her lap and both exits in view. Her reflection in the scratched window looked older than 29. Shadows under her eyes, hair escaping from a knot. Clinic badge lanyard twisted around itself like a thin rope. Translator, it said in clean black font beneath her photo. She had spent the evening moving room to room between triage and billing, helping mothers decode insurance forms, helping construction workers describe pain they had ignored for weeks, helping an older man with shaking hands understand that his medication would cost less if he split the prescription and came back Friday. She could make fear comprehensible in 2 languages for strangers. At home, she could not make the numbers obey. By the time she reached her block, the rain had softened into mist. The bodega metal grate was half down. The deli cat watched her from atop a stack of bread crates, unblinking, regal, dry. Her building's front step held 3 soaked flyers and a cracked planter with dead basil stems. Inside, the hallway smelled like bleach and old plaster. Someone had fried onions hours ago and opened no windows. She climbed the stairs slowly because her knees had stiffened on the bus, because the fluorescent light on the second floor flickered just enough to make depth uncertain, because rushing in empty hallways had once cost her more than time. Apartment 3B greeted her with the same peeling paint above the radiator and the same narrow table that doubled as desk, dinner space, and document station. She dropped her canvas work bag onto a chair and took inventory. The ritual that made panic manageable. Keys, wallet, clinic ID charger. 2 clementines from the staff break room wrapped in a napkin. She set the fruit beside the sink like treasure. Her little brother Matteo had left his algebra workbook open on the couch, pencil tucked into the spine, a note in slanted handwriting on the top page. Ate at Nico's. Don't wake me. Good luck tomorrow. He had added a lopsided smiley face, as if he were 12 instead of 17, as if softness could be scheduled and preserved. Arya stood in the kitchen alcove and opened the cupboard anyway, knowing what she would find. Half a bag of rice, 2 cans of black beans, salt, tea bags gone stale. She measured rice into a pot with careful hands and shut the flame off halfway through cooking to save gas, letting residual heat finish the job. While the pot steamed, she opened her laptop and pulled up the spreadsheet she had been avoiding all week. Rent overdue by 9 days. Electric overdue by 16. Metro card reload needed by Thursday. Matteo's school fee balance highlighted in yellow because yellow looked less like emergency than red. Her second job at the clinic covered food and part of rent if she accepted every extra shift offered. The morning assignment in Manhattan would cover the rest if she made no mistakes, if no one canceled, if nothing broke first. At 3:18, she ate from the pot standing up, too tired to find a plate. At 3:24, she ironed her one good blouse with a travel iron she had bought used and prayed it would not trip the breaker. At 3:39, she laid out dark slacks, sensible shoes, and a thin notepad she reserved for private clients, the high-paying kind who wanted discretion wrapped in professionalism. The agency email had arrived 2 days earlier with unusual phrasing and unusually fast payment terms. Immediate placement requested. Upper East Side residence. Medical interpretation for live-in nurse and family elder. Confidentiality mandatory. She had accepted in under a minute, then spent the rest of the night staring at the address and trying not to think about what kind of home had a staffing manager instead of a front desk. She slept in 2-hour fragments, waking each time the radiator clanged or a car horn rose too sharply from the avenue. By 6:50 a.m., a thin gray light had climbed over the windowsill. Matteo shuffled into the kitchen, hair flattened on one side, hoodie half-zipped, still all elbows and worry even when he smiled. "You're up early," he said, then glanced at the rice pot and corrected himself. "You didn't sleep." "Big job," she said. "Don't forget your Metro card." He looked at her wrist when she reached for the kettle, not at the scar itself, but at the bracelets that hid it. He had learned what not to name. "I can do after-school delivery this week," he said carefully. Nico said maybe. "You have exams." She kept her voice even, light. "Your job is school." His mouth pressed thin, 17 trying to sound older. "Our landlord called while you were in the shower yesterday." "I know." He sounded, "I know." She turned and put a hand on his shoulder, firm enough to end the sentence, gentle enough not to turn it into a fight. "Lock the door behind you. Text me when you get there." By 8:10, she was downtown on the E train with her coat still damp at the hem and her notepad balanced on her knee, reviewing medication terms in Italian and Spanish, then in English plain language for patient safety. The car lurched. A woman in office heels read market updates on a tablet. A man in paint-splattered boots slept against the pole, chin to chest. Arya rechecked the assignment email and saved the attached NDA to 3 separate folders. One canceled contract could turn a bad month into an eviction notice. Precision was not personality for her. Precision was rent. The Belandi building rose above the block in dark glass and pale stone. Set back behind a polished awning where 2 doormen stood in tailored charcoal uniforms that made her thrift store coat feel louder than neon. Inside, the lobby was all marble and controlled quiet. White orchids in low arrangements, crystal sconces casting warm light that did not flicker, and a reception desk where no one raised their voice because no one needed to. Men in expensive suits crossed the floor with phones to their ears and stopped talking the moment a taller man in black entered from a side corridor, as if his presence rewrote the air pressure in the room. No one introduced him. No one had to. Luca Belandi moved like someone accustomed to immediate compliance, dark eyes scanning once and holding nothing for longer than necessary. He did not look at Arya directly, yet she felt catalogued anyway. Her agency badge, her worn tote, her careful stillness all filed in under one efficient glance. "Ms. Reyes?" a woman at reception asked. "Yes." "Welcome. Mr. Belandi's grandmother is expecting the nurse at 9 sharp. You'll be assisting with care instructions and consent language. Please sign here, then here." Her tone was polite, practiced, the kind that made even simple requests sound non-negotiable. Arya signed. The pen was heavy, branded, probably worth more than her weekly groceries. She handed over her ID for photocopying and watched a security officer clip a temporary access card to a lanyard marked "Visitor" in restrained silver letters. Her phone vibrated once in her pocket, then again. She waited until the receptionist looked down at her terminal before checking it. Unknown number. No voicemail icon yet. Then a text from her landlord at 8:57. "Need firm payment plan by tonight. After that, I file." Her throat tightened. She typed a response with both thumbs, erased it twice, then settled on. "I will send partial tonight after work. Please give me 48 hours for remainder." She hit send and turned her phone face down against her palm, willing herself into work mode, into language mode, into the version of herself that could stand in rooms built for power and still speak clearly. A man in a tailored black suit approached from the elevator bank, earpiece visible, posture military straight beneath expensive fabric. "Ms. Reyes," he said, "I'm Enzo Marini, head of security. Follow me, please." She nodded and fell into step half a pace behind, measuring each breath as they crossed polished stone toward private elevators that opened without a button press. Somewhere above them, behind layers of glass, money, and protocol, an old woman needed a translator. Somewhere below, in a 2-bedroom apartment with peeling paint and unpaid bills, Matteo was probably boarding a train with his backpack zipper broken again. Arya tightened her grip on the notepad until the edge bit her palm and stepped into the mirrored elevator as the doors slid closed around her reflection, tired and steady and cornered, with no room left for error. The elevator climbed so smoothly, Arya could only feel motion by the soft pressure in her knees and the changing numbers reflected in mirrored steel. Enzo stood beside the panel without speaking, one hand folded in front of him, the other near his earpiece, and she watched his reflection instead of his face, because eye contact with men trained for enforcement had never felt neutral. On the 38th floor, the doors opened into a private vestibule lined with pale stone and muted abstract paintings, each one larger than her kitchen wall. A woman in a fitted navy dress waited with a tablet and a pen held exactly parallel to her wrist, as if even her posture had been approved by policy. "Ms. Reyes," she said, glancing once at Arya's shoes before looking at her badge. "I'm Chiara Conti, household manager. House protocol is simple. You speak only when translating, you do not discuss what you hear, you stay in assigned areas, and you surrender your phone camera access while on this floor." She extended her hand without warmth. "Please." Arya passed over the phone. Chiara attached a small adhesive seal over the camera lenses with practiced efficiency, then handed it back like a returned evidence item. You will remove that in front of security downstairs, she said. If the seal is broken early, your agency contract is void. Her tone never lifted, never sharpened, but Arya felt the pressure in it all the same. The quiet reminder that one mistake in this building carried a larger price than embarrassment. She signed a second confidentiality form on Kiara's tablet, while Enzo observed without comment. Her hand cramped halfway through the legal language. Kiara noticed and said, "Initial there as well," in the same clipped voice used for the first signature, as if pain and compliance were equally administrative details. The corridor beyond the vestibule opened into a living room, built from money and restraint. Ceiling-high windows over the river, white marble veined in gray, crystal lamps that cast fractured patterns across polished wood. Arya's coat, still faintly damp at the hem, felt like an intruder in the room. A nurse rose from a chair near the fireplace, tall and broad-shouldered, with tired eyes and a stethoscope looped into a precise coil around her neck. "Elena Markovich," she said in accented English, then switched to rapid Italian when she saw Arya's face sharpen with recognition. "Thank God they finally sent someone. Your predecessor translated medication names wrong yesterday." "Wrong?" Arya set her bag down and opened her notepad. "I'm here now," she said in Italian. "Start from the beginning." Elena exhaled. Anticoagulant timing, renal dose adjustment, consent for imaging, and the grandmother refuses all of it if it comes from anyone who sounds uncertain. A door at the far end of the room opened before Arya could answer. Luca Belandi stepped in with two men in dark suits who stopped at the threshold while he continued alone. His movement controlled enough to feel calculated, even when it wasn't. In daylight, he looked younger than his reputation and more dangerous than the photographs attached to gossip columns at checkout counters. Tailored black suit, tie perfectly centered, dark eyes that measured before they acknowledged. He looked first at Elena, then at Arya's notepad, then at Kiara. "Status," he said. Elena answered in formal Italian, and Arya translated into English only when asked, her voice steady, technical, stripped of softness. Luca listened without interruption. When Elena mentioned yesterday's error, his jaw tightened once. "No improvisation with my grandmother's care," he said, still looking at Elena. "If language is unclear, you stop and bring Ms. Reyes." Then his gaze shifted to Arya, quick and direct. "You're here to prevent mistakes, not to be polite about them. Do you understand?" The question held the edge of a command. Arya felt her throat narrow, old reflex and present pressure colliding, but she kept her chin level. "Yes, Mr. Belandi, I understand." He gave one short nod and turned away. The two men followed him out, and the room seemed to release a breath no one admitted to holding. Kiara checked something on her tablet and departed in the opposite direction, heels soundless on the runner rug. Arya looked at Elena, who offered a tired half-smile that didn't reach her eyes. "If he says little," Elena murmured, "it is a good day." The grandmother's suite sat behind double doors trimmed in brass and softened by warm lamplight. Isabetta Belandi was smaller than Arya expected, wrapped in a cream cardigan, silver hair braided and pinned at her nape with a tortoiseshell comb. She watched Arya approach with clear, unsparing attention. "You are the translator," she said in Italian. Her voice carried age without weakness. "The last one made me sound confused." Arya moved closer and crouched slightly so they were eye level. "Then today you will sound exactly like yourself," she replied. The older woman studied her for a beat, then nodded once, approving the answer rather than the credentials. The next 90 minutes unfolded in dense medical language and careful pace. Elena explained fluid retention, medication interactions, warning signs to monitor overnight. Arya relayed each term twice. Technical version for records, plain language for consent. Isabetta interrupted often, not from frailty but from precision, asking about side effects by hour, not day, and demanding alternatives before agreeing to any change. Arya matched her rhythm until the older woman finally placed a thin hand over the consent page and said, "Read line 6 again." Arya did. "Good," Isabetta said. "You do not flatten meaning when you're tired." The words landed harder than praise from a stranger should have. Arya smiled before she could stop herself. "Thank you." "Eat before you faint," Isabetta said, already reaching for her glasses. A translator who collapses is useless. By early afternoon, Arya had worked through medication charts, a telehealth call with a specialist in Milan, and 3 amended consent forms that required witness initials from a rotating line of staff. Each signature came with a subtle glance, the kind rich households perfected. Who is she, and why is she still here? At 2:40 p.m., Chiara escorted her to a side dining room for a mandated break. Silver domes covered untouched plates. Crystal water glasses caught the window light like ice. Arya sat at the far end of the table and unwrapped the clementine she had brought from home instead of touching the catered lunch. A junior staffer in a charcoal vest entered with linen napkins, paused at the sight of her fruit, and said gently, "You may use the meal service, Ms. Reyes." The kindness made the class divide more visible, not less. "I'm fine," Arya said. She peeled the second clementine and ate both sections slowly, saving half the bottled water for later. Her phone buzzed once against her thigh. "Landlord, need receipt tonight." She typed with stiff fingers under the tablecloth and promised transfer by 10. When she looked up, Luca stood in the doorway, silent, one hand in his pocket, as if he had been there longer than the moment required. His expression gave nothing away. "My grandmother signed?" he asked. "Yes," Arya said, standing too quickly. "All amended forms are complete." "Good." His gaze dropped to the clementine peels on her napkin, then returned to her face. "Billing will process before you leave." Relief hit so fast, it almost felt like weakness. "Thank you." He nodded and left with the same measured stride, and Arya sat down again only when the doorway was empty. Her pulse took a full minute to settle. By 7:12 p.m., the rain had returned, thinner now, turning the lobby's revolving door into a slow wheel of silver reflections. Arya handed her visitor lanyard to security, waited while a guard checked the camera seal, and signed out on a digital panel that displayed her name in clean capital letters. Enzo approached from the reception desk with a small envelope. "Payment confirmation," he said. "Direct deposit pending overnight. Courtesy car can take you to Queens." "No, thank you. Subway is fine." The refusal came automatically. Favors had terms even when they arrived wrapped in politeness. Enzo did not argue. "As you wish." She had just stepped toward the entrance when the revolving door turned again and Raul Serrano walked in, smiling like he belonged in marble lobbies and boardrooms. Camel coat, rain beating along the shoulders, hair neat, shoes polished. He carried a velvet ring box in one hand and a bouquet of white lilies in the other, the performance calibrated for witnesses. Arya stopped so abruptly, her heel slipped on the tile. Raul's smile widened with concerned tenderness that would have looked convincing to anyone who had never seen him at a locked apartment door. "Arya," he said warmly, loud enough for the receptionist to hear. "I've been trying to reach you. Can we talk?" Every muscle in her back tightened. "This isn't the place." He moved closer anyway, just inside polite distance. You left before breakfast. He lifted the lilies, as if offering apology rather than control. I wanted to make things right. There had never been a breakfast to leave, not in years. But he knew language was theater, and theater shaped memory for bystanders. Arya glanced toward Enzo. The security chief was speaking quietly into his earpiece, eyes on Raoul, posture neutral and watchful. Raoul noticed and lowered his voice without losing the smile. "Don't cause a scene," he murmured. "You're very good at staying useful when you stay quiet." Her skin prickled. "I'm leaving." He caught her wrist before she could step away, fingers pressing exactly where the old crescent scar sat beneath her bracelets. His face remained soft for the room. His whisper did not. "You translated files you were never meant to remember," he said. "If those words leave your mouth, Matteo inherits my debt. Understand?" Air stalled in her chest. Raoul released her with a gentle pat that looked affectionate, then opened the velvet box and tipped a diamond ring into her palm. It flashed hard white under the lobby lights. "For your trouble," he said in a normal tone. "I still take care of what's mine." Arya's fingers trembled, but she closed them around the ring because dropping it would have felt like breaking in public, and he fed on visible fractures. "Don't come near my brother," she said. Each word pulled tight. Raoul's smile held. "Then don't make me repeat myself." He turned, nodded to Enzo like two men concluding ordinary business, and walked back through the revolving door into rain and traffic. The lilies remained in Arya's free hand, petals cool and damp against her knuckles. She set them on the nearest side table without looking at them again. Enzo stepped closer, voice low and formal. "Ms. Reyes, do you need assistance?" "No," she almost said, because no had kept her alive before. But Matteo's face rose in her mind, 17 and trying to sound older than fear. "No," she said anyway, the lie bitter in her throat. "I need to go." The subway ride home blurred into wet windows and station announcements she barely processed. By the time she reached her block, her coat collar was dark with rain, and her hand still hurt from clutching the ring so hard the edges left shallow marks. At 8:46 p.m., the small parking lot beside her building held one idling sedan and the same battered stool by the attendant booth. But the valet on duty was not scrolling his phone the way he usually did. He stood with his shoulders squared too rigidly, thumb rubbing over his key fob in quick, repetitive strokes, gaze fixed on the pavement until she spoke his name. "Luis?" He looked up fast, then away. "Evening, Ms. Reyes." His voice caught on the second syllable. "Long day?" She paused, rain ticking against the metal awning above them. "You okay?" "Yeah, fine." He swallowed and held out her building key from the lockbox, hand shaking once before he clenched it still. "Third floor lights out. Superset tomorrow." Arya took the key. "Thanks." He nodded without meeting her eyes. Inside, the stairwell smelled of damp concrete and old paint. The second floor bulb flickered as usual, but on the third floor landing the fixture outside 3B had been unscrewed completely, leaving only a dark socket and a faint metallic tang in the air. Her pulse began to hammer, heavy and fast. She stood motionless and listened. No television from next door. No plumbing rattle. No music from 3A where someone always played salsa too loud. The silence was too complete, layered and deliberate, like a held breath behind drywall. Arya slid one hand into her coat pocket and felt the ring box there, velvet damp from rain, corners sharp against her palm. Her keys scraped softly as she separated the apartment key from the rest. Then she saw it, a narrow shadow moving under her door, cutting across the thin strip of hallway light from the stairwell before going still. Aurelia did not put the key in the lock. She stood on the third-floor landing with rain dripping from her coat hem to the cracked tile, watching that thin strip of shadow under her door hold still as if it were listening too. Her heart hammered so hard she could feel it in her gums. She eased one step backward, then another, keeping her shoes flat to avoid the squeak in the left sole. The stairwell light from below threw a weak trapezoid across the hall, enough to show that her doormat had shifted 3 inches to the right, and the old scratch mark near the deadbolt was fresh, pale wood, where paint should have been. Someone had forced it, then closed it again. Her phone slipped in her damp hand on the first try. On the second, she opened Mateo's contact and typed, "Where are you right now?" She did not send it. She called instead, pressing the speaker against her ear with fingers that would not stop trembling. It rang once, twice, 3 times. "Aria?" Mateo answered, music muffled behind his voice and a burst of teenage laughter in the background. "I'm at Nico's, like I said. You okay?" Her knees nearly buckled with relief. "Stay there," she said, too fast. She forced her breathing down and started again. "Stay there tonight. Don't come home. Lock the door if his brother leaves. Text me the address again." "Why? What happened?" "Do it now, Mateo." The line went quiet in that way he had when he understood she was scared and trying not to be. "Okay," he said softly. "I'm not moving." She ended the call and backed toward the stairs. Just as she reached the first step, a floorboard inside 3B groaned. The sound was unmistakable, the exact complaint of old wood beneath weight near her kitchen alcove. A second later, her doorknob turned once, slow and deliberate, stopped by the outside lock she hadn't touched. Someone inside had tested whether she was already there. She ran. By the time she reached the lobby, her lungs burned and her wrist throbbed under the bracelets where Raul had pressed earlier. Luis was still at the booth, key fob in hand, face draining of color when he saw her. "Ms. Reyes, there's someone in my apartment," she said. "Call the police now." He stared at her for one stunned beat, then grabbed the desk phone and punched 3 numbers. His voice shook on the address, but steadied as he repeated it. Aria stood with her back to the cinder block wall, watching the stairwell door in case it opened. It did not. Rain hissed beyond the entry glass. Her phone buzzed with Mateo's texted location, then another message from him. "I'm safe, promise." The first patrol car took 11 minutes. She counted each one off the red digits above the lobby mailboxes. Officers went up with Luis and came back down with professional blankness and rain on their shoulders. "No suspect on scene," one said. "Front window latch in the kitchen was forced. Bedroom drawers are open. Looks like someone searched the place. We can file a report." "Did they take anything?" "Hard to say if you don't have inventory." Inventory? As if terror could be sorted into missing objects. Aria climbed back up with one officer and stood in her own doorway, while he photographed the pride frame, the clothes yanked from her single closet shelf, Mateo's backpack dumped on the floor, the kitchen drawer where she kept utility bills now turned upside down. The only thing placed neatly in the center of her table was the velvet ring box, open and empty. She felt at once for the inner zip pocket of her bag and touched the diamond there, exactly where she had shoved it on the subway and forgotten. Beside it sat one of Mateo's algebra pages folded into a square. On the outside, in Raul's precise handwriting, "Good girls stay quiet." The officer took the note with gloved fingers and dropped it in an evidence sleeve. "We'll add this," he said. "If your ex has made threats, You can request a protective order first thing in the morning. Morning felt very far away. She nodded anyway and signed where he indicated. When the apartment finally emptied again, the silence returned heavier than before. Arya stared at the overturned cushions, the peeled paint above the radiator, the life she and Mateo kept patching together with overtime and caution, and understood with cold certainty that Raúl had crossed into the one place she had left. He hadn't come for jewelry. He hadn't come for cash. He had come to measure her fear in square feet. At 12:37 a.m., she packed one change of clothes, Mateo's passport card, her clinic ID, and the old flash drive she had hidden inside a tea tin behind stale bags she never used. The drive held copied account tables Raúl once dictated for translation practice during their marriage. Entries she had saved because numbers that clean attached to shell companies were never innocent. She slipped the police report copy into her bag and left without turning on another light. An all-night diner on Northern Boulevard let her sit in the back booth until close as long as she bought coffee. She wrapped both hands around the chipped mug and listened to Raúl's voicemail again through one earbud, the one he'd left 3 months earlier when she ignored his first attempt to contact her. "You owe me discretion, Arya. Don't test me." She saved it to 2 cloud folders and emailed the file to herself with subject lines that looked like clinic paperwork. At 3:06, she opened the flash drive on her laptop, took screen captures of account numbers, transfer dates, and one memo line she had never forgotten. Transit liability reassigned, M. Reyes. Then encrypted the folder with a password Mateo would never guess and Raúl would hate. Not your property. Before dawn, the rain thinned to mist. Arya took the first train into Manhattan and walked from Rockefeller Center to the Diamond District, with her hood up and the velvet box in her coat pocket. Each step a small argument against shaking. The storefront she chose had bulletproof glass, fluorescent lights, and a hand-lettered sign promising same-day cash. The broker barely glanced at her before loop, scale, and a number typed into a calculator. 32,000, he said. It appraised higher. Wholesale, not retail. Cash today or no deal. She thought of rent, of Mateo's face when he pretended not to be hungry, of the note on the table in Raúl's handwriting. Cash today. The bills came in crisp stacks and a receipt she folded into her wallet. 2 blocks over, she walked into a licensed firearms shop with steel racks and camera domes in each corner and asked for a legal compact model suitable for concealed carry. Her voice sounded unlike her own, flatter and steadier. Paperwork, background check confirmation. Waiting period already satisfied by a permit class she had taken with a clinic co-worker after 2 subway scares and never told anyone about. By 9:20, she left with a locked case, a receipt, and a scheduled emergency range session in a basement lane, where an instructor corrected her stance without comment and made her repeat one phrase until it settled into muscle memory. Breathe. Decide. Do not flinch from your own choice. At 11:05, she paid a bike courier extra to deliver an envelope directly to Enzo Marini at the Belandi building. Inside, a printed transcript of Raúl's voicemail, the screenshot packet, and a short note in black ink for security review. He threatened my brother. I am willing to testify if terms protect him. She watched the courier scan the address and pedal into traffic before she allowed herself to exhale. By 1:45 that afternoon, procedure carried her to the clinic on 103rd Street 15 minutes early. Hair tied back, knuckles bandaged from clenching too hard around train poles. Jaw tight enough to ache. Intake was already crowded. A mother with a feverish toddler. 2-day laborers arguing quietly over whose shift ended first. A man in a suit asking if cash moved him ahead in line. Arya translated insurance eligibility, pharmacy substitutions, and discharge instructions for 3 straight hours without lifting her eyes from the forms for long. At 2:14 p.m., the front doors opened and Raul Serrano entered with a bouquet of white roses and a smile prepared for cameras. A young woman from a neighborhood blog trailed him with a phone held chest high. "Mr. Serrano, one quote about your community donation?" she asked. He laughed softly, charitable and polished. "Health access matters to all of us." Then he turned toward Aria, as if surprised and relieved to find her there. "Mi vida," he said warmly in English for the room. "I've been worried sick." Several heads lifted. The receptionist froze with a clipboard half raised. Aria felt heat rise up her neck, humiliation sharp as a blade. "Do not call me that," she said. Raul stepped closer, still smiling, still the devoted ex in public lighting. He offered the roses. "I came to apologize. Can we not do this here? You shouldn't be here at all." His expression never changed. He leaned in as if to kiss her cheek and whispered near her ear, "Your brother was moved this morning, Queens to Jersey. You start talking, I stop being gentle." The floor seemed to tilt. Aria reached for her phone with her free hand, thumb already swiping toward Mateo's contact. Raul moved faster, slapping the phone from her grip. It hit the tile, skidded through rain tracked in from outside, and bounced into the gutter by the curb when the automatic door opened for a patient. Pain flared across her knuckles, where his hand caught hers in passing. The blogger gasped. No one stepped between them. Polite uncertainty held the room in place. Raul raised both palms, performance intact. "See?" he said loudly, eyes on the bystanders. "She's upset. I understand. Trauma does that." Aria's throat closed. Her skin prickled from scalp to wrists. Sound narrowed until she could hear only the blood in her ears and the squeal of the automatic door cycling open and shut. She could not tell if her next breath would come. Raul took one more step into her space, voice dropping again. "You had one job. Silence." A black SUV braked hard at the curb outside. The clinic doors parted, and Luca Belandi came through the rain in a dark overcoat. Enzo on his right, and 2 security men behind them. Luca's gaze cut across the room, fixed on Raul's hand still hovering near Aria, and his face went utterly still, in the way that made silence spread faster than shouting. "Lock this block down," he said, voice low and barely contained. "Pull transit feeds from 0700 forward. Find the brother. Medical now." Enzo was already on his phone. "Yes, sir." Raul tried a diplomatic smile. "Mr. Belandi, this is a private misunderstanding." Luca did not look at him. He crossed the waiting room in 6 controlled strides and stopped in front of Aria, placing his body between hers and Raul's without touching her. Up close, rain darkened his collar, and a pulse beat hard in his jaw. "Are you injured?" She stared at him, words stalled somewhere behind panic. "Aria." He crouched to eye level, tone precise, each syllable a handhold. "Do you understand me? Stay behind me." Her lungs unlocked on a ragged inhale. She nodded once. "Good." He rose and spoke over his shoulder to a clinic nurse who had finally moved. "Ice for her hand. Clean dressing. Now." Then, to his men. "Witness statements. Preserve camera footage before it disappears." Raul gave a short laugh that didn't reach his eyes. "You can't just take over a public clinic." Luca turned then, slow, controlled strength replacing motion with threat. "Watch me." Raul's charm cracked at the edges. "She's my ex-wife. This is personal. She is under my protection," Luca said. The words were quiet, absolute. "You lost the right to call anything personal," when you used her brother as leverage. Raoul's jaw twitched. For a second, Arya thought he might lunge, but Enzo had already shifted left, one security man right, triangulating space with practiced precision. The blogger lowered her phone under Enzo's stare. The receptionist finally picked up the dropped clipboard with shaking hands. A medic from the back exam rooms arrived with gauze and antiseptic. Arya let herself be guided to a chair against the wall, still within Luca's line of sight. Her knuckles stung as the nurse cleaned them. Across the room, Luca issued orders in clipped chains, each one turning fear into tasks, tasks into movement. Patrol units arrived 2 minutes later to take statements. Raoul was escorted outside for questioning, protesting in smooth legal language that grew brittle when no one answered. Arya watched Luca through the blur of adrenaline and fluorescent light. Watched him track every doorway, every phone, every face that might carry information out before he wanted it out. He did not offer comfort. He offered perimeter, speed, consequence. In her world, that was what safety looked like when it arrived in a dark coat and a voice like a locked gate. When the nurse taped the final strip of gauze over her hand, Luca came back to her chair and lowered his voice. "Your brother's location will be confirmed within the hour," he said. "Until then, you do not leave my sight." Arya swallowed, fingers curling around the edge of the plastic seat. And if he moved Matteo already? Luca held her gaze, the controlled fury in him sharpened into promise. "Then we pull him back today. Then we pull him back today." The certainty in Luca's voice cut through the fluorescent hum and the smell of antiseptic. He touched 2 fingers to his earpiece without taking his eyes off Arya. "Enzo, priority 1 is Matteo Reyes. Pull MTA swipe records, rideshare pulls, toll cameras eastbound and southbound. Priority 2, Serrano's driver tree and burner phones. No calls to local precincts beyond required incident filing. I want clean channels." He shifted his attention to the nurse. "She leaves through the rear corridor, no lobby exit." Arya pushed up from the plastic chair, pulse still uneven. "I'm not hiding while you decide things for me." "You're not hiding," he said. "You're staying alive long enough to get your brother back." His tone stayed level, but command sat inside every word. "Can you walk?" "Yes." "Good. Stay on my left." The clinic suddenly moved like 2 overlapping worlds. In one, patients still waited for blood pressure checks and prescription renewals, voices low, chairs scraping tile. In the other, Belandi security swept doorways and mirrored glass, placing bodies between her and every line of sight. A plainclothes officer tried to ask Arya another question about Raoul's slap and the broken phone. Enzo stepped in with a card and a number for follow-up, polite and immovable. By the time Arya reached the back hallway, someone had already retrieved her phone from the curb in an evidence bag and synced her contacts to a secure tablet in Enzo's hand. Rain hit the loading bay awning in soft bursts. A black SUV idled with rear door open, engine vibration humming through the wet concrete. Luca guided her in, then followed, leaving one seat between them while Enzo took the front passenger seat and began issuing updates in clipped Italian and English. Transit feed acquired. 2 possible hits on Matteo's school jacket near Queensboro transfer at 9:11 and 9:24. Face match confidence 63 and 71%. Working for confirmation. Arya leaned forward. "He texted me from Nikos. He said he was safe." "Could have been coerced," Enzo said without turning around. "Could also have been delayed send. We're checking metadata now." Luca handed Arya a clean towel from a sealed pack. "Dry your hands. You're shaking." "I can hear that without you saying it." "Then hear this too. You did the right thing sending evidence to Enzo." His gaze stayed fixed ahead on the blurred taillights. Raoul expected you to stay private. You forced him into protocol. The words landed harder than comfort would have. Arya pressed the towel over her knuckles and watched diluted pink spread into the fabric from hairline cuts. Her throat still felt raw from panic. If he touched Matteo, he didn't have enough time to move him far. Luca said, "Men like Raoul confuse cruelty with strategy. It makes them sloppy." 27 minutes later, the SUV rolled through the service entrance of the Belande building, where 2 guards were already waiting under the awning with umbrellas and sealed evidence pouches. Arya expected the same marble lobby and controlled quiet from that morning. But Enzo diverted them through a freight corridor lined with cameras and keypad doors. Luca kept one hand lightly at her elbow, not gripping, simply directing her through each checkpoint. In a windowless conference room on the second security level, 6 monitors showed maps, traffic feeds, and paused stills from station cameras. A medic with gray hair and a soft Bronx accent stepped in as soon as Arya sat down, cleaned her knuckles again, checked her pupils, and wrapped her wrist with a flexible brace when she flinched at rotation. "Old ligament damage," he murmured. "Not from today." He did not ask for details. He wrote notes, handed her water, and told her to sip slowly until her breathing stopped hitching. Luca stood at the far end of the table, sleeves pushed back, tie removed, issuing orders to 3 teams at once. Team 2 holds the Queen's apartment perimeter until forensics clears. Nothing removed without chain of custody photos. Team 3 goes to the Jersey address linked to Serrano's shell lease. Quiet entry first. We are extracting, not performing. He paused as one of the analysts raised a hand. "Say it." Metadata check confirms Matteo's last text came from his phone, but tower ping places device near Maspeth at 11:52, not Astoria. After that, it goes dark. Arya's fingers tightened around the paper cup until it buckled. Luca noticed and lowered his voice when he addressed her. "He is alive until proven otherwise. Understand me?" She nodded, unable to trust her voice. A second analyst rotated a monitor toward her. Grainy footage showed a side street behind a deli, time-stamped 11:47 a.m. Rain stippling the image. Matteo, hood up, backpack on one shoulder, turned as a dark van pulled to the curb. The angle hid faces, but Arya saw the hesitation in his posture, the half-step backward, then a man in a maintenance jacket speaking to him with open hands like reassurance. Matteo got in. The van drove off. Arya made a sound she barely recognized as her own. "Pause," Luca said. The frame froze on Matteo's profile. "Enhance plate." "We already did," the analyst answered. "Stolen last week in Yonkers." Enzo's phone vibrated. He listened, eyes sharpening. Thermal drone over the Kearney lease site shows 3 warm bodies in Main Bay, 1 in office mezzanine. No heavy weapons visible. Team 3 is in position. Luca's voice dropped into pure command. "Go." The room went silent except for radio hiss and rain tapping the building's exterior vents. Arya stared at the monitor until pixels blurred, then forced herself to count breaths the way the range instructor had taught her in the basement lane. Breathe. Decide. Do not flinch from your own choice. Across the table, Luca watched feed timestamps and team movement overlays with frightening calm, but his jaw stayed tight, a small, relentless tell of pressure held in check. "Entry," a voice crackled over comms. "Front bay secure, 2 adult males detained, moving to office." Another beat of static. Arya's stomach twisted. "Office clear. 1 juvenile male located, responsive, no visible major injury." Her eyes flooded so quickly she had to cover her mouth with her bandaged hand. to keep from choking on the breath that tore out of her. Enzo was already relaying medical instructions. Confirm identity. Mateo Reyes confirmed, asking for sister. Luca closed his eyes for one brief second, then opened them and looked at Arya. He's out. She bent forward, forehead nearly to the table edge, shaking with relief and delayed fear and exhaustion so sharp it felt like a fever. Luca came around the table and crouched beside her chair, not touching until she lifted her head. He'll be brought to our physician first, then to a secure room on the residential floor, he said quietly. You'll see him in under 30 minutes. I need to hear him. You will. Luca signaled to Enzo, who placed a call on speaker within seconds. The line connected with background noise, doors, footsteps, someone giving directions. Then Mateo's voice, hoarse and shaky and unmistakably alive. Arya? I'm here. Tears broke free despite her effort to stay steady. Are you hurt? No, just... He swallowed audibly. They said you were in trouble. They said Raul sent them to get me somewhere safe. I knew it was wrong when they took my phone. You did everything right, she said. Listen to me. You did everything right. A medic's voice entered, asking Mateo to sit while they checked his pulse. He protested weakly that he was fine. Enzo ended the call only after confirming transfer route and escort names twice. By the time Mateo arrived, wrapped in a borrowed dry hoodie and clutching a juice bottle with both hands, the storm had eased to a light mist. He crossed the room and folded into Arya with the awkward force of 17-year-old limbs that had grown too long too fast. She held him so tightly he made a muffled complaint, and then held on tighter anyway. Luca turned away to give them privacy, speaking to Enzo near the door. 3 days passed before dispatch finished the full route map. But by that evening, Luca already had preliminary threads pinned. Raul's driver had swapped vehicles twice. The holding site lease ran through a disposable corporation. And the man in the maintenance jacket had prior assault charges dismissed on technicalities. Arya listened as Enzo laid out each element and felt something inside her settle into a different shape. Fear remained, but it now sat alongside structure. Luca faced her again. Your apartment is sealed until sunrise. We pulled prints, fiber, and a partial shoe impression from the kitchen sill. The note from your table is in custody with your case file and duplicate scan in our archive. The broken phone has been mirrored. Nothing gets lost. Arya glanced at Mateo, who was finally eating crackers from a medical tray, as if hunger had returned all at once. And if Raul files some legal story first? He already tried. Enzo's mouth flattened. His counsel called this an overreach and a personal dispute. We provided footage, timestamps, and witness logs. They stopped calling. Luca added, You and Mateo will stay here tonight. Separate rooms, same corridor, 2 guards posted. Tomorrow we formalize protective orders with counsel on site. You choose whether to pursue criminal testimony now or after review. Arya met his eyes. You keep saying choose. Men like him never gave me choices. Then start getting used to them, Luca said. He led them upstairs through a private elevator that opened into a quieter wing than the public rooms Arya had seen earlier. Warm lamps, thick carpets that muted footsteps, the scent of clean linen and cedar instead of marble polish. A house physician rechecked Mateo, documented mild dehydration, no acute injuries, and advised rest. A staff member named Sophia brought soup, plain toast, and 2 sets of borrowed clothes without staring at Arya's bandages. Only when Mateo had fallen asleep on top of the duvet, 1 sock half off, did Luca ask Arya to step into the study across the corridor. The room was dim, except for a desk lamp pooling gold over leather-bound files and a framed black-and-white photo on the credenza. Rain traced slow lines down the tall windows. Luca remained by the door at first, giving her space. "You asked me in the SUV why I'm doing this," he said. "You deserve the full answer." Arya stood with her back to the bookshelf, suddenly aware of every locked door she had ever feared. "I assumed business. Raoul crossed into your house, threatened someone under your roof, and that violated protocol." "That is true," Luca said. "It is not the whole truth." He crossed to the credenza and picked up the framed photo. In it, a teenage girl with dark hair and fierce eyes stood between Luca and an older woman Arya recognized as Isabetta. The girl's smile was wide, almost defiant. Luca set the frame on the desk, facing Arya. "My sister, Bianca, 16 in this picture." Arya's chest tightened. She waited. Raoul ran debt channels years before he pretended to be legitimate. Recruitment, transport, coercion. He used contracts and fake employment paperwork to move girls between states. Bianca got pulled into one of those rings through someone she trusted. Luca's voice never rose, but grief pressed against each measured syllable. "We found her after 11 months. Alive, traumatized, ready to testify. Then witnesses started withdrawing. Evidence went missing. Cases stalled." Arya looked from the photograph to his face and saw for the first time not only control, but cost. "She never got justice. She died waiting for it," he said. Silence settled thick between them. Arya felt the old instinct to apologize for asking, for existing inside another person's pain, then rejected it. "Is that why you built all this?" She gestured toward the secure floor below, the teams, the protocols, the speed. "Not just power, systems." "Yes." Luca's gaze did not waver. 12 years of building systems that don't depend on people being brave alone. Medical, legal, transport, archive, witness support. Expensive, repetitive, and non-negotiable. Arya swallowed against the burn in her throat. "I thought your first instinct with me was ownership." "It was," he answered without defensiveness. "That instinct kept people alive in my world for a long time. It also destroys trust if left unchecked." He placed both palms on the desk, leaning forward slightly. "So, I enforce a line in this house. No one is bought. No one is silenced. Not by enemies, not by allies, not by me." The words reframed everything that had felt sharp and unreadable since she stepped into the marble lobby that morning. Protection as logistics, yes, but also as restraint. Command with rules. Power tied to a boundary he refused to cross. Arya touched the brace on her wrist. "He gave me that ring in your lobby like a leash. I sold it at 9 this morning." A flicker passed through Luca's expression, almost grim approval. "What did you do with the money?" "Paid for a legal handgun, training, and leverage." She met his gaze fully. "I'm done being cornered." He nodded once. "Good." She drew a slow breath and looked again at Bianca's photo, memorizing the face of the girl whose absence had shaped this room. "I'm sorry," she said. And this time, it did not feel like surrender. It felt like recognition. Luca's voice softened by a fraction. "Don't be sorry. Testify when you are ready. We'll build the case so it doesn't collapse if one person gets scared." Outside, the rain finally stopped. In the hallway, a guard's footsteps passed and faded, steady as a metronome. Arya stood in the lamplit quiet with her hand still aching, her brother asleep across the corridor, and the first clear understanding of the man in front of her. Dangerous, disciplined, and grieving in a way that had become infrastructure instead of ruin. Arya did not realize she had been gripping the back of the leather chair until her fingers ached and the edge left shallow crescents in her palm. She loosened them one by one and kept her eyes on Bianca's photograph because looking directly at Luca felt suddenly more dangerous than looking at grief. The study was warm, but her skin still held the memory of rain, clinic tile, and the cold hallway outside 3B. When she finally met his gaze, she saw what had unsettled her from the beginning. He watched like a man trained to anticipate impact, and now she could not separate the force in him from the care he had offered her brother. "I need rules," she said, voice rough from adrenaline and held tears. "If Matteo and I stay here, I need to know what this is and what it is not." Luca stayed where he was, palms flat on the desk, giving her distance without stepping away from the conversation. "Name them." No locked doors from the outside. She heard her own pulse in her ears and forced herself to keep going. "No one touches my phone without asking unless there is immediate danger. No one questions Matteo without me or counsel in the room. And you do not make decisions about my testimony without me." He answered without pause, agreed on all four. A beat passed. "Add one from me. If my security gives you a movement instruction during an active threat, you follow it first and argue with me after." The old reflex rose at the command in his tone. A flash of Raoul's voice threaded through a different man's control. Arya's throat tightened. Luca seemed to register the shift immediately, because his next words came lower and slower. "I know command can sound like captivity to you," he said. "I am not asking for obedience. I am asking for survival protocol." She believed him, and belief frightened her almost as much as fear had. "You keep making this sound simple." "It isn't simple." His expression hardened, not at her, but at the weight of the truth. "It is structured. That is different." Across the corridor, a floorboard gave a small settling creak near Matteo's room, and both of them turned instinctively toward the sound. Luca waited until silence returned, then looked back at her. "He'll sleep hard tonight. Shock does that." Arya nodded. She became aware of the brace on her wrist, the clean line of gauze over her knuckles, the way Luca had noticed every one of those details without making a performance of concern. Attraction arrived in fragments she resented. The steadiness of his hands, the restraint in his posture, the fact that he had asked before, stepping closer when she was shaking in the security room. Her body had learned to read danger long before tenderness. Now both signals fired at once, and neither canceled the other. "I sold the ring this morning," she said again, as if repetition might make the choice feel more solid. "I told you what I bought, but there's more. I paid for a lockbox and 2 duplicate drives. One is with my friend Camilla in Jackson Heights. She doesn't know details, only that if I send a code phrase, she takes it to legal aid." A flicker of approval crossed his face. "Good contingency." "She thinks I'm helping a patient through a domestic case." Arya exhaled shakily. I hated lying to her. "Operational secrecy is not the same as betrayal," he said. "It is a trade-off when people are targeted." She almost laughed at the clinical language and how much she needed it. "You really do turn pain into systems." "I had practice." The lamp on the desk cast warm light over his jaw and cheekbone, softening none of him. Arya realized she was studying him the way she studied high-risk intake forms, looking for hidden clauses. "What happens if I decide not to testify?" "Then you don't testify." His answer was immediate. "We pursue financial and conspiracy routes through records, not your voice. Harder case, slower case, still a case." "And if I do testify and panic halfway through?" "We plan for that too," break protocol, medical support, counsel hand signals, staggered evidence submission, so your statement is not a single point of failure. By midnight, the house had gone quiet in the particular way expensive buildings did, insulated from street noise and ordinary life. Arya could hear only the faint hum of climate control and the distant elevator chime somewhere below. The calm should have eased her. Instead, it made every emotional contour sharper. "You said your first instinct was ownership," she said softly. "What keeps that from happening anyway?" Luca held her gaze. "Practice. Accountability. Enzo will challenge me if I cross a line. My counsel will challenge me. My grandmother will do worse than challenge me." The corner of his mouth moved in something almost like fatigue. "And you would walk out, which would make me deserve the loss." The answer hit somewhere deep, past fear and into hunger she had not allowed herself to name. She shifted her weight and immediately winced at a pull in her wrist. Luca took one step forward, then stopped. "May I?" he asked, glancing at the brace. The question itself undid her more than contact would have. Arya nodded. He adjusted the edge of the wrap with careful fingers, checking circulation at her fingertips and releasing her hand as soon as he was done. No lingering touch, no claim disguised as care. Her chest tightened anyway. "Thank you," she whispered. He inclined his head once. "Get some sleep if you can. Enzo will post the written protocols at your door within 10 minutes. She should have left then. Instead, she heard herself ask, "When did you last sleep?" His expression went blank for a fraction, then honest. "I don't remember." "Then don't give me orders you won't follow." For the first time that night, something unguarded passed through his eyes. Not softness exactly. Recognition. That sounded like trust. "It sounded like terms," she said, but her voice had lost its edge. A sharp knock broke the moment. Enzo entered without waiting for permission, tablet in hand, posture rigid. "Sorry to interrupt. Serrano just contacted precinct counsel and requested a welfare conversation with Ms. Reyes through his attorney. He's claiming concern, not threat. He also sent a direct message from an unregistered number to a recovered phone." Luca's face went still. "Read it?" Enzo glanced down. "Tell Arya I can still fix this quietly. She belongs with people who understand her." Revulsion crawled up Arya's spine, hot and immediate. "He wants me back in private where words disappear." "Yes," Luca said. "And he is testing whether you answer." "I will answer," Arya said. Both men looked at her. Luca spoke first. "No direct call without recording, counsel present, and trace active." "Then set it up exactly that way." Her fear sharpened into focus. The same mental click she felt when translating emergency consent under pressure. "He thinks he can keep this in whispers. I want him on record trying." Enzo nodded once, already moving. "Conference room B is secure and wired. Counsel can join in 6 minutes." Luca looked at Arya for a long beat, then gave one clipped instruction. "Stay behind me until we're in the room." She lifted her chin. "I'll walk beside you." He considered, then stepped to the side and held the door open. "Beside me, then." The corridor lights were dimmed for night cycle. Amber pools along thick carpet. 2 guards at either end. Arya passed Matteo's door and paused just long enough to hear his steady breathing through the wood. She touched the frame with her bandaged hand and kept moving. Conference room B sat at the end of the hall behind frosted glass and a keypad lock. Inside, a legal counsel joined by encrypted video, gray suit, clipped diction, introducing herself as Miss Voss. Enzo placed Arya's mirrored phone on the table. connected to a recording rig with timestamp display. A second screen showed live trace software waiting for signal. Ms. Voss laid out the framework in precise terms. You will not negotiate. You will not volunteer location. You will ask clarifying questions that invite incriminating detail. If he threatens, we preserve language and end the call. Do you understand? Araya nodded. Yes. Luca stood behind her right shoulder, silent, presence like reinforced steel. It should have made her feel handled. Instead, with consent terms clear and exits visible, it made her feel anchored. Enzo tapped the table once. Trace ready. Arya pressed call. Raoul answered on the second ring. Voice honey smooth, familiar enough to make her stomach turn. There you are. I was worried. She kept her tone flat. You don't get to use that word. A soft exhale on the line, almost amused. Arya, listen to me. You're confused because powerful men are filling your head. Come home and we settle this. Quietly. Define settle. You hand over whatever copies you made. You sign a statement that today was a misunderstanding. His voice dipped lower. Then this drama ends, and your brother's future stays uncomplicated. Ms. Voss lifted 2 fingers. Keep him talking. Arya stared at the timestamp and asked, Is that a threat tied to my testimony? It is me protecting what is mine from people who profit off your fear. The room temperature seemed to drop. Luca's hand flattened on the back of her chair, not touching her, holding himself in place. Arya spoke clearly, each word deliberate. I am not yours. My voice is not yours. My brother is not leverage. Raoul's patience thinned audibly. Careful. You are speaking from inside another man's house. Do you think he protects for free? Before Arya could answer, Luca leaned toward the table, voice low, barely contained, and devastatingly calm. She is under my protection because she chose terms. You will address counsel now, or this call ends with new charges. Silence stretched on the line. Then Raoul gave a short, brittle laugh. Belandi, I wondered when you'd speak. You can't shield her forever. I don't need forever, Luca said. I need long enough to finish you lawfully. Raoul's next words came clipped, mask slipping. You're making a mistake, Arya. She felt fear move through her and keep going, leaving clarity behind. No, she said. I'm correcting one. She looked at Enzo, then Miss Voss, then straight ahead as if Raoul could see her. Any further contact goes through legal. If you approach my brother, I add attempted coercion of a minor witness. If you approach me, I file immediate violation and seek remand. Do you understand me? He breathed once, hard enough to distort the line. You always were ungrateful. Call terminated, Ms. Voss said. Enzo cut the connection and immediately began exporting audio to 3 encrypted destinations, chain of custody log, populating in real time on the side screen. Trace caught 2 relay points and 1 physical origin, he said. Warehouse office in Newark tied to his council's shell lease. We have it. Arya sat very still while the adrenaline drained, leaving her hands cold and her jaw trembling. Luca moved around the chair and crouched in front of her, eye level again, as he had in the clinic. You held the line, he said quietly. She gave a shaky breath that might have been a laugh if the night were kinder. I thought I'd freeze. You didn't. Outside the conference room, the first pale edge of dawn had not yet reached the windows. Inside, evidence finished uploading. Legal directives went out, and the boundary Raoul had depended on for years. Private fear, private silence, private control, closed like a gate behind her. The export bar on Enzo's screen hit 100%. and the room exhaled in small, controlled motions. Ms. Voss closing her legal pad, Enzo sealing a drive in a tamper bag, Luca straightening without looking away from Arya. Her pulse still kicked hard against her throat, but the shaking in her hands had slowed into fine tremors she could work around. Ms. Voss's voice came through the monitor, crisp and unsentimental. We now have direct coercion language tied to witness suppression, plus prior threats, plus kidnapping exposure. I'm filing emergency motions in criminal court and petitioning the Belandi Council Tribunal for immediate review under their internal enforcement charter. He relied on that tribunal for protection before. He won't like it used against him. Her gaze sharpened. Ms. Reyes, you can testify by sworn statement only or live. Live carries more impact and more stress. Arya looked at Luca. He gave no push, no hint. Your choice, he said. Live, she answered, surprising herself with how steady it sounded. If I hide my face now, he still owns part of the room. By 5:40 a.m., she stood in Matteo's doorway with a cup of tea gone lukewarm in her hand, watching him wake in fragments. He blinked at the unfamiliar ceiling, then sat up too fast, panic flashing until he saw her. You're okay? I'm okay. She crossed to him and touched his shoulder. You'll stay on this floor with Sophia and 2 guards while I handle hearing prep. He scrubbed both hands over his face. The guy who grabbed me said Luis sent him, said you were waiting in a car. Matteo swallowed hard. He knew my school route. That detail landed like ice. Arya nodded once. Thank you. That matters. Enzo met her outside with a tablet and a manila folder. We pulled Luis in at 4:10 with counsel present, he said. He's scared, cooperative, and documented. He handed her a signed statement. Luis admitted Raul's men had threatened his daughter's daycare schedule, forced him to copy Arya's building key fob, and ordered him to unscrew the 3rd-floor bulb and text when Arya arrived. The repetitive rubbing of the fob had not been nerves alone. He had been waiting for a confirmation ping he was terrified to send. He never sent it. The intruder had entered anyway with the copied key. Arya pressed the folder closed. Did he name who gave orders? Raul's driver, Thomas Vale. Forensics matched Vale's shoe tread to your kitchen sill impression and lifted his partial print from your window latch. NYPD updated your report from unlawful entry to aggravated witness intimidation. Enzo's expression stayed formal, but his tone softened. Every strange piece from last night now has a chain. At 7:15, Chiara brought a garment bag and set it on a chair in the guest room without her usual administrative distance. Your clothes were cleaned and pressed, she said. Ms. Belandi asked me to give you this as well. She placed a slim silver chain beside the bag. Arya opened her fist. In her palm lay the pawn ticket, folded and worn at the edges from being handled too often. She threaded it through the chain and fastened it around her neck. No diamond, no apology, just proof of conversion. His symbol of ownership turned into her evidence of choice. Luca waited outside the private elevator in a charcoal suit, tie dark, eyes shadowed by a night with no sleep. Ready? She nodded. One condition. He lifted a brow. I speak first in that room. His answer came without hesitation. Done. The tribunal convened in a paneled chamber inside a private legal annex near Foley Square, half old-world authority and half modern surveillance. Carved wood, recessed cameras, soundproof glass, 2 uniformed marshals, and a long table where 5 council arbiters sat with tablets and paper copies side by side. Raul stood at the opposite end in a navy suit that broadcast composure he no longer possessed. His counsel flanked him. Luca stood 1 pace behind Arya's right shoulder, not touching, present as consequence. Proceedings opened with formal language, jurisdiction citations, and stipulations on admissibility. Then Arya took the oath and stepped to the witness position. Her mouth was dry enough to hurt. She unhooked the pawn ticket chain and set it on the table beside the evidence binder so everyone could see it before she spoke. "He gave me a ring in a lobby full of witnesses and told me to stay quiet," she said. "I pawned it the next morning and used the money to secure legal protection, training, and document custody. This is the receipt chain from that sale." Ms. Voss entered exhibits in sequence. The blackmail voicemail file with verified metadata, screenshots of offshore ledgers, Arya's original translation notes, the clinic camera footage of Raoul striking her phone away, police photographs from the apartment break-in, the handwritten "Good girls stay quiet" note with handwriting analysis, Luis's sworn statement, transit footage of Mateo's abduction, the recorded midnight call with Raoul's coercive language, and the mirrored extraction log from Arya's recovered phone. Each item was tagged, time-stamped, and acknowledged. No gaps. When cross-examination started, Raoul leaned into practiced tenderness. "Arya, you were exhausted, under pressure, easily influenced by men with resources. Isn't it possible you misread concern as control?" She held his gaze and let the silence sit until his smile thinned. Concern doesn't threaten a minor. Concern doesn't break into homes. Concern doesn't require silence contracts. One arbiter, an older woman with steel-gray hair, asked Raoul directly, "Did you or did you not instruct intermediaries to relocate Mateo Reyes?" Raoul's jaw twitched. "I instructed protection." "Against what?" He had no answer that did not confess motive. Deliberation lasted 16 minutes in an adjoining room while marshals held positions at both doors. Arya stood by the window with her palms flat against the cool stone sill and counted breaths. Luca remained close but silent, letting her have the space she had demanded. At 11:02, the arbiters returned. The chair read the ruling in a voice stripped of drama. Raul Serrano was found in material breach of counsel covenant through coercion of a protected witness, unlawful detention by proxy, document intimidation, and operational contamination. Sanctions were immediate and permanent. Expulsion from protected networks, seizure and forensic freeze of affiliated assets, dissolution of named enforcement crews, and transfer of the full case package to state and federal prosecutors with non-interference orders. He was to leave the city under monitored exile conditions pending criminal process. Raul moved before the last sentence ended. He slammed a hand off the table edge, drove past his counsel, and lunged toward Arya with his face split open by rage. The nearest marshal caught only his sleeve. Chairs scraped. Someone shouted. Arya's body reacted on training before panic. She stepped back, drew the compact handgun from her legal retention holster, and held center mass with both hands locked, arms steady. She did not fire. "You don't own my silence," she said, clear enough that the words hit every wall. Raoul froze for one stark beat, stunned less by the gun than by her refusal to shake. Then Enzo and 2 security men drove in from the side. Marshals regained control, and Raoul was pinned, disarmed, and dragged back behind the line as he shouted promises that sounded small in a room that had already closed around him. The rest moved with bureaucratic finality. Restraint forms, transfer signatures, chain of custody stamps. By 1:30 p.m., Arya sat in a courthouse conference room with Ms. Voss and a family court advocate while emergency protection orders were signed and entered for both her and Mateo. At 2:05, Detective Harlan from Queens called to confirm upgraded charges and receipt of tribunal evidence. "Your initial report is now attached to a major case file," he said. "No dismissal pathway left on technicals if this chain holds." Enzo, on speaker, replied, "It holds." At 3:20, Aria called her landlord from Miss Voss's office, put him on speaker, and sent the overdue transfer while he watched his portal refresh. His tone shifted from pressure to brisk professionalism. Payment received. Filing paused. Lease remains active. One thread closed. At 4:10, Camilla arrived in person at the annex lobby, eyes sharp with worry and loyalty, carrying the lockbox Aria had left with her. No speeches. She handed it over and squeezed Aria's forearm. "Next time you tell me the truth sooner," she said. "I will." Aria meant it. Inside the box were the duplicate drives. Untouched, Ms. Voss logged both into evidence reserve, gave Aria one encrypted copy for personal archive, and documented the handoff in writing. Another thread closed. Late afternoon light painted the courthouse steps in pale gold by the time the final signatures cleared, and Matteo, now placed in a secured school transfer program with escorted transit, came out beside Sophia and a plainclothes guard. He looked wrung out, but upright. Aria took his hand first, then let him go when he asked for space with the awkward dignity of 17. Luca joined her at the top of the steps, city noise rising below them in ordinary waves. Buses, horns, a vendor rolling up a steel gate. He looked at her, not the cameras, not the street. "I can offer perimeter, resources, and time," he said quietly. "Nothing else without your consent. You are not mine." Aria studied him in the cool, late afternoon light, the man built from command and grief and deliberate restraint. Safety still felt temporary because life was temporary, because threats changed shape, because trust was work and not a switch. But this moment was real, documented, chosen. "You are under my terms too," she said. A faint, tired smile touched his mouth. "Good." She slid her hand into his, not as surrender, not as debt, but as an agreement witnessed by daylight, law, and her own unbroken voice.